Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for spending your Saturday evening with me. Today is Saturday, August 12th, and I'm just saying that for posterity so that when we look back on this video, we'll remember what today's date was. We have a great show planned for you tonight with a great guest. So I'm going to tell you all about that in a minute. But before I do that, I would just like to take a minute to thank my moderators for keeping the chat classy at all times. You know who you are, and you do an amazing job for me, and I couldn't do it without you. So thank you guys so much. And also to all of my subscribers, thank you for coming. And if you're not subscribed, what are you waiting for? Hit that button below. It's free. And hit the bell too, so that you'll get notified every time I go live, because you might not want to miss it. We have a lot to catch up on, but let me just say hello to a couple of people in the chat. Hello, Thunder Horse. Good to see you. Christy, good to see you. Donna Marie, as always, one of my best mods. Aunt BB, hello. Okie dokie, good to see you. Hi, Heather. Lorna McKenzie, Hot Mess Equines coming in hot. Iris Hewlett. Okay, thank you guys for showing up today. With me today to discuss the Gilgo Beach suspect, Long Island serial killer suspect Rex Heuerman and his family is my friend, licensed psychotherapist Meredith Beardmore. She is a psychotherapist in private practice. She is also an author with a book that will be coming out soon entitled Hey Addiction, Thanks for Nothing. And I think you're going to love her. So let me bring her on and she can introduce herself.
Hello, everyone.
Hi, Meredith. It's so good to see you. And you can see that she's got in her little screen name there, Mend with Mare, which is her channel, which I have already linked below. So you can absolutely go subscribe to her channel. She does some really great, amazing reaction videos to music videos, right? Music and music lyrics and Taylor Swift. And that's how we met. I was looking, this is so silly, but yes, I was looking for a Taylor Swift song on YouTube and your video popped up and it was a reaction video to the song that I was looking for. And I started watching your stuff and then I started watching your videos on addiction and we just became friends because I was just hooked.
Yes.
So let's get into this.
Clicked right away. It was like we've known each other.
We did.
Already.
We did. Yes. And isn't it so nice that we get to spend a Saturday night togetger?
It's amazing.
On a live. Because I love it. If we don't have dates tonight, really, maybe there's some other people out there who don't and they want to join us, right? All right. Well, let's get into this quickly. So for those of you who are subscribed to Mare, who may not be subscribed to me, welcome. And thanks for showing up tonight because I know Meredith shared this on her channel. So we may have some of your viewers who don't really know about this case. Right. So we're just going to dive right in and then we're going to do a little bit of a recap on what this case is about. But this case, as a general broad overview, is about a man named Rex Heuerman who has been arrested and indicted for the killings of 3 of the 4 Gilgo 4, as they call them, women who were, I'm going to use the blanket term escorts, because some people say prostitutes, some people say sex workers. I think escorts is just, that's what I'm going to use because it's my preferred term. Their bodies were found in 2010 on Gilgo Beach in Long Island. They were all wrapped in camouflage burlap, which is used by duck hunters. They were all strangled. And this guy, Heuerman, has been picked up, indicted by a grand jury for 3 of the 4. Amber Costello, Melissa Barthelemy, and Megan Waterman. There is a 4th indictment that is currently being heard by the grand jury. And we are hoping that the indictment will also come down on Maureen Brainerd Barnes. But I wanted, Meredith, you to join me tonight because there's so much psychology in this, you know, and about like what would cause a person to do this. And did the wife know about it? And did the family know about it? And were they hoarders? And look at the condition of their house. And why doesn't the wife just move out? And there's so many questions here that we're going to get into. So everyone in the chat, if you have questions, save them for a little while because we're just going to get started. The first thing we're going to do here is I'm going to show you the perp walk. And this is the first look that we got of the suspect, Long Island serial killer. And just to show his presence, there's really no video. I mean, there's no audio really in this clip, but this is what he looked like. This is the first look that we got of him. Be good if I rewound it. Okay, here we go. You can see he's at least 6'4", maybe 6'6". He dwarfs the other people that are surrounding him. He's got an imposing presence. The witness, who was a roommate of Amber Costello, who was the fourth of the Gilgo Four to go missing, described him as looking like an ogre, being between 6'4" and 6'6", and driving a first generation green Chevy Avalanche. So that's the first impression that we got of him. And then some videos surfaced online. And this was very interesting to me because to me, this was a complete 180 from the guy that I thought that he was. I had never heard him speak before. So let's take a look at this video so we can get a little more background on what he sounds like and the way he behaves. This was an interview that was done in 2022 with a guy who's like in real estate or something. Here we go.
Tell us, who you are, where you're from, and how long you've been in New York.
Okay. Rex Heuerman. I'm an architect. I'm an architectural consultant. I'm a troubleshooter. Born and raised on Long Island.
Okay.
Been working in Manhattan since 1987.
He's a troubleshooter. Born and raised in Long Island, been working in Manhattan since 1987.
Patience.
That's funny. I was hoping you would say that.
Yeah. Patience, and I don't like to use the word tolerance, but sometimes you have to.
Yeah.
And it's not just with the city, it's also with the client.
What did you make of that, Meredith?
I feel as if he is just very, very skilled at what he's doing. Like he's giving off those just like, I'm just an average man. I'm just, he mentions tolerance even. I don't
Patient and tolerant, right?
Tolerance. And it's just a way to produce a certain image. He's very smart. I mean, I think that a lot of times people like this fly under the radar for so long because they observe behavior and they know how to manipulate people and they know how to blend in so that they're not even, no one would ever think twice about him. Oh, that's just Rex. Like he's a fine guy, but there's this other side to them. And they're very skilled at like separating and putting things into boxes. So he may have been a very different person at work than he is at home, or maybe he was similar at home, but obviously there's this very sick dark side that exists, very sadistic dark side.
And it seems like, I don't know, there's something about his voice that kind of like surprises me too. Like you expect like a big man like that to have this big booming kind of voice. And it's like someone's high pitched and just very, it's almost like he's also trying too hard to be affable and likable.
Yes. And look, and I know that everybody would probably say that, hindsight's 2020. And so it's easy for me to now look at him and be like, oh yeah, he's putting that on. But it creeps me out. I think that he's putting that on. I mean, think about other serial killers that if they would change their appearance or their voices or things like that in order to go fly under the radar. I think he's doing the same thing.
Yeah. Ted Bundy was a charming guy too, right?
Mm-hmm.
All right, let's go back to sharing this. He's a 59-year-old, seemingly successful architect. There's a picture of his house in the background, Meredith. That's where he lived. And
he's an architect?
He's an architect.
What?
No. This is where the bodies were found, in this thick bramble. These are the 4 young ladies that they call the Gilgo 4.
Wow.
So there you go.
That's where he lived.
That's where he lived.
Architect.
Okay. He not only was he a successful architect, this was the house that he grew up with with his parents. So he was born, I think, in 1964. He grew up in that house in Massapequa, which is an upper middle class suburb of Long Island.
Okay.
His father died when he was 11 years old. And he became, I guess, the man of the house. I think he was the oldest. He was definitely the oldest son. He had a brother who was 2 years younger.
Mm-hmm.
So his father dies when he's 11. Now he's the man of the house. I don't know what went on in that house after that, but I will tell you this. His brother, Craig, in 1988, when Craig was 22 years old, was involved in a fatal motor vehicle accident nearby on a major highway where he was, the brother, drunk, twice the legal limit, coked out, killed a New York City, I believe it was a New York City Housing Authority captain in a car accident, and went to jail for a little over 2 years. So something was going on in that house.
Oh, yeah.
Whether it be addiction, abuse, some weird sort of like emotional incest, maybe like we saw in the Roberta Laundrie, Brian Laundrie dynamic, where Roberta Laundrie wrote this really weird letter to her son that was almost like she was writing it to her husband. Wow. I mean, we can speculate, and we're not here to spread any misinformation, and we don't have the actual facts. We're talking about what could have happened. Well, in his childhood that could have led him to this. What do you think?
And that's you got to look at somebody who does things like this, like what might have shaped or impacted psychopathy and this type of personality trait. So a lot of times there's some type of trauma, and I hesitate to say just trauma as a blanket statement because that's not really fair. A lot of us have trauma in our childhoods, and it doesn't mean that we're going to end up doing something like this.
We don't turn into serial killers, right?
Exactly. So I do think that he was probably predisposed to some type of mental disorder. And then I think the death of his father, having something like that, and then becoming man of the house, whether there was pressure or maybe he enjoyed being the man of the house. Maybe he is something that, it's a position of power that he liked. And maybe that's why his brother had the issues that he had. Something was brewing. And typically whenever there's this type of, complex trauma and maybe emotional incest to some degree, then it's not surprising that he might have something like antisocial personality disorder, potentially.
Mm-hmm. Hot Messy Coin says, and statistically, isn't this kind of personality traits related to abuse?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah. Interesting.
Mm-hmm. That is.
So then he gets married for the first time in 1990. I think he moves to New Jersey with his first wife. They have no children. They're married for about 3 years. Then when he moves back to Long Island in 1994, he buys his childhood home from his mother. Huh. So he lived in that house until he got married for the first time, left it for 3 years, and then came back and bought it from his mother and lived in it with his second wife, who has filed for divorce. They were married for 27 years. But before we get into that, let's get a little closer look at the condition of the house. And, we have speculated about whether or not there was like a hoarder type situation going on in there.
Ooh, said, victim resembles his first wife.
Yeah. And, what kind of situation the wife may have been in. So I want to show you a little bit about what the house looked like and how the media was harassing the wife after his arrest.
Days after investigators wrapped up collecting evidence at Rex Heuerman's home, his wife, Asa Ellerup, and her 2 adult children return to a life they no longer recognize.
It's been a very tumultuous time for them. Life has been thrown upside down in the past few weeks.
The family of a Manhattan architect charged in the Gilgo Beach serial killings is now asking for privacy, writing in a statement that they have endured profound and indescribable catastrophe. Heuerman's wife adding, "I am pleading with you all to give us space so that we may regain some normalcy in our neighborhood."
The streets were closed. You had to get access by police escort to get to your own home. The neighbors have been impacted just as much as she has.
Some neighbors are reaching out, sending care packages and grocery deliveries. One writing, "Dear neighbors, we are thinking of you through this difficult time. If there's anything we can do for you, please let us know." Ellerup filed for divorce on July 19th, right after 59-year-old Heuerman was arrested and charged with 3 counts of first-degree murder in the deaths of 3 women in their 20s, believed to have been sex workers over a decade ago. And he's now the main suspect in the disappearance and death of a 4th woman.
We have obtained a massive amount of material.
Following a nearly 2-week search of the family home, investigators say it'll take time to analyze and catalog what they found, as police in other states are also looking into potential connections to other unsolved crimes, including in Las Vegas, Nevada, where Heuerman had a timeshare, and in Atlantic City, New Jersey, for possible ties to the 2006 Eastbound Strangler case, while his estranged wife focuses on moving on with her life.
She needs to protect herself and her children at this point, not knowing what's going to happen with him.
We've reached out to Rex Heuerman's attorneys for comment and have not heard back. He has pleaded not guilty and is scheduled to appear in court tomorrow, guys.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so fun fact, that was Stephanie Gosk, and I met her when I was when I went to the court appearance on August 1st. She was just kind of waiting in line with me, eating munchkins, because I went out and brought munchkins for everyone. But it was so interesting to meet someone that I've been watching on TV for a very long time. So, taking a look at that house, and now I'm going to show you some pictures of the inside of the house. These are pictures that were provided by Asa's attorney after the search warrant was executed. The police did a 12-day search on this house. And the district attorney did a press conference, and he said that the house was so full of clutter that that's why it took so long. So I don't know. I mean, this is the condition after the search. We don't know what the house looked before because we don't have those pictures. But let me show you these pictures. And I have a feeling that it might have been similar. There's no there's no audio on this, but it's just pictures that are kind of in a loop.
Wow.
And I mean, I've watched hoarders. They ripped up all the tile in their bathroom, as you can see, took out the side of the tub with a sawzall. I think they were looking for remains. They may be trying to connect him to some of the dismembered bodies that he's not been connected to yet. Kind of on a loop, but you can see that it looks like an episode of Hoarders. So people are saying it. I've had people in the comments and I've seen people in other venues saying, why wouldn't the family just move? Why wouldn't they just leave? Why wouldn't they just get out of there? Their mattresses were shredded. Their couch was shredded. They have nowhere to sleep. They have nowhere to go. They were hanging out on the porch, as we saw when the media was kind of harassing them. The son has special needs and he's crying.
Oh gosh. I feel so bad for them. I mean, I think it's just horrible.
Sound went down. Can you guys hear us now?
Is it better now?
I don't know.
I heard it go down a little bit, Melanie, for you.
I don't know why.
Oh, there we go. That's good.
Better?
That's good. Yeah.
Are we better now? I don't know. I'm going to get the hang of this, you guys, one day.
Oh my gosh. So I know that somebody had commented that I didn't know much about the case. And I will say, I'll be honest, I avoided this just a little bit because, I hear some tough stuff in my own job on a daily basis. So, I wanted to come into this fresh so that it wasn't like I had prepared things. I'm better this way. So just so you all know that's why I didn't have like every single detail about him being an architect, but it says so much. And also think about that, the juxtaposition between your husband being an architect and having the ability to probably make the house beautiful and expanded. And then, but then with the hoarding that went on. And of course they're not going to leave. Sorry if I'm talking too much, just interrupt me.
No,
but
go for it. How could they? What if they have no assets? What if they have no money? What if they don't have the resources to do that?
Yeah. Well,
and if the son has special needs, how important is his environment to him? And taking him out of the only environment that he knows, how detrimental could that be to his mental health?
Very, very detrimental. And I'm speaking not only as a therapist, but also as a mother of a child with special needs. And any type of transitions can cause regression and emotional distress. And I think that we need to have a lot more compassion for them with whatever choices they're making. Right now, they're just trying to survive. And especially if there were potential hoarding issues, which it looks like it very well could be. I mean, one of the hallmarks of that type of disorder is indecisiveness and avoidance. So having to maybe face even potentially moving would be so distressing. And also having her personal items messed around in that way, when usually people that have that issue are deeply attached to every single item. Like when you see hoarders, you see them crying over like a piece of paper written from how many years ago. And to us, we would just think it was trash, but to them, they're deeply connected. So this is not only has he just completely just traumatized them, he's further traumatized them in the aftermath of all of this.
Right. I think a lot of people don't understand that. And that's
right.
That's scary.
That's really scary.
So, we were talking a lot about how, the family could be victims in all of this too. Yes, this is all about the victims and we are all about the victims, but, isn't it possible that the family could be victims in all of this too? And then, there were some explosive allegations yesterday by an attorney who claims that the wife may have known what was going on and just like some crazy ass stuff that we're going to get into in a little while. But, going back to like the whole hoarding thing, that show is just so hard to watch. And then when you see a house in the neighborhood that stands out really among all the other homes, I just can't even imagine what kind of trauma they're going through. Their attorneys did a press conference yesterday and it was kind of like a nothing press conference. They said that they're going to be filing a notice of claim in order to recover for some of the property damage. So if anybody wants to know my take on that, it's you have to file a notice of claim anytime you sue a municipality. So in New York, if you're going to sue the county, the city, the state, the county, the city, a town, the police department, you must file a notice of claim within 30 days of the occurrence. If you don't file one, you're out of the box. And then after that, they get to do a hearing if they want. They do some discovery. And then you have to file a lawsuit against them within a year and 90 days. What I don't understand is why they came on a press conference to say, we're going to be filing a notice of claim within 30 days. I don't understand what the point of that was. Why didn't they just file it? Literally, it is literally a piece of paper. It's a form. Was it to garner some public sympathy, to try and get the public to, pressure the county to try and give them some money? Again, putting it out there that she has cancer, was that some other sort of public plea for sympathy, to add to the GoFundMe, which I know so many of my viewers were, so kind to donate some money for them, which was very nice because and they've raised over $40,000. And then he came out and said that she has cancer, that there's not enough money in the company bank accounts to pay her premiums, and that, she may wind up without health insurance, which is another, nothing, because she can get Medicaid, she can have COBRA. So there's a lot of, issues I had with that press conference. I don't really know why they had to do it.
I know, but I don't blame them. I think that this is just so intrusive. Everyone just coming to their home and how awful this has been. I feel for them. I mean, I think that we all kind of need to be woken up that it can be very complex, this whole situation, and that they need support. They were likely victims as well. Right. So can we be kind? I mean, I think that just jumping to the conclusion, oh, she's in on it, or that's just for sympathy. It's like, wait a second here. If you understand people with the ability to kill and who have antisocial personality disorder, perhaps more than likely, lack of remorse, he probably doesn't feel any source of concern for his wife and kids. More than likely.
You know, and that's another thing too. Could she have been in an abusive relationship? Definitely. You know, could he have been controlling? You know, we know that he had some addictions. We know that he was a gambler, because on one of my last live shows, I had a dealer call in from Mohegan Sun who dealt blackjack to him 20 years ago and never forgot him, because he sat at her table for 8 hours and taunted her for 8 hours, saying things to her like, you know, while you're at work, your husband is at home inviting other women over and they're touching all of your stuff. And she never forgot it in 20 years. So we know that he's got addiction problems. We've heard that he's a heavy drinker. We've heard that he apparently had an addiction based on his Google searches to pornography and a sex addiction. And, you know, the fact that he had burner phones. I mean, what kind of a relationship do you think he had with his wife?
And also you have to think about why do you think maybe he chose her? Maybe, you know, these type of people do prey on people that struggle. We have to think about that piece. Maybe she did have some issues with hoarding. Maybe she developed it over time being in the relationship. More than likely it was already there. And someone who maybe he perceives as weak and won't push back and won't challenge him, and has their own issues. So I bet it was calculated.
Yeah. And people, you know, people say like, why didn't she just leave? You know, why didn't she just, I mean, I think there's a lot of reasons why people stay. Maybe you can go into that a little bit, because I think there's a lot of people out there that don't understand, you know, domestic violence and the element of control that a guy like him could have over not only his wife, but his children.
Understanding exactly what to say to keep her and them in a state of fear, that's huge. And just, you know, making her feel as if he probably put her in a position where she maybe couldn't afford it. Maybe where would she go? And especially if you have a child with special needs, a child that's perhaps, I think that they were saying might be on the spectrum. I mean, uprooting all of the child's stability. Because as a mom, like, you just want to do what's best for your kids. And we don't know what his behavior was like in the home, but more than likely he knew how to keep her scared, and she didn't probably want to disturb anything with her son. But I kind of think that maybe he wasn't, who knows how he presented himself at home, because even if he had his own daughter working, didn't she take the train in with him every day? I feel like I saw that.
I don't know if she did. I know that she worked in his office.
Yeah. And she looked, I mean, she was what, like 26, like 26? The age of some of the victims, and the way that, I mean, the layers here, the layers. Yeah. Maybe.
Teresa Dunn says, Meredith, she'd be glad to have someone accept her and her son who needs extra support. She was a target from early on.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes. Thank you for getting my blind spot. That's perfect. You're going back. I mean, really, he could have set it up as, here, I'll take care of you. No worries. And he's got this on the side.
Yeah. Tony Elia says, BTK's daughter said her father was very abusive on every level. I wonder if Rex was the same way. BTK said Rex was a copy of him.
Wow. Yeah.
I mean, he could have had them under some serious, her anyway, under some financial control. I think there's been some reporting that she was a nurse at one time, but I think she was a stay-at-home mom, so she may not have had any control over the finances in the family. You know, I know that they did have food stamps, but I think that was a result of the son being on you know, some kind of Medicare or Medicaid where he was entitled to that through his benefits. So I don't know too much.
I bet she had no idea. I'm just speculating. Like, I had no idea because, I mean, when you think about, if you just put the pieces together, him being an architect and then what his home looks like, and then, so it's like, where was his money going? Really?
Escorts.
Yeah.
Some serious addictions. I mean, he wasn't around very often.
Right.
In the original press conference, the district attorney said that during the times when the first 3 women that he's been indicted for went missing, the wife and the children were out of town or out of state.
Wow.
He has since like walked that back a little bit. So I'm not really sure. Also, in the basement, they had like a storm cellar that had like those Bilko doors on it where you have to go outside to get in, and you can open those doors and then you go down and it's like a cinder block type of like storm cellar. In that storm cellar, they found a vault with a heavy steel door on it. Inside that vault were 279 guns. 93 of them were registered because in New York, you have to register your guns. Certain guns you don't have to register. And a lot of people from other states don't understand that because a lot of states you don't have to register your guns at all. If they're antique, or there's a lot of exceptions to registering guns. There were reports, and I'm not saying this is true or not, but I will tell you the district attorney did not deny this when asked 3 separate times in the press conference after the police search whether there was a mattress found in that vault. Did not deny it. So we don't know if he took these women somewhere. We don't know if he took them to his home. We do know there was an escort who has been on the news quite a bit. Her name is Nikki. She had a date with him in Port Jefferson, maybe in like 2016. And he tried to get her to go back to his house in his car. And she, you know, said no. And she got away.
And he was married because they've been married for, what did you say, 27 years?
7 years, yeah.
And there's an outside entrance down.
Yeah.
Wow.
So this is interesting. I'm going to play a little clip of some bombshell allegations. This is the attorney for Shannon Gilbert, who is an escort who went missing after the Gilgo 4, or around the same time. She had called 911, escaped. Her body was not found until 2011 in the marsh. The district attorney is saying it's not related to Heuerman at all. But this attorney has been these victims' attorney, or this victim, one and another victim who actually was part of the Manorville butcher cases for a long time. And he made some really serious allegations yesterday, which we're going to take a look at right now. I'd like your thoughts on this also.
I want to bring in now John Ray. He is an attorney who represents the families of Gilgo Beach victims, Jessica Taylor and Shannon Gilbert.
Somebody said yesterday in one of the comments that I read somewhere that he should get sued just for wearing that suit. We got to lighten it up a little bit because what we talk about is like really, really heavy. Okay, so let's see what John Ray has to say. He's the attorney for victims Jessica Taylor, who is not connected yet to Heuerman, and Shannon Gilbert.
John, thank you also for joining us again tonight. We always appreciate your perspective. What did you make of the presser? I mean, I know you were there. You spoke afterwards after their lawyers sort of left. What did you make of the whole thing?
Well, what I make of it is very simple, and that is that this lady is conning everybody, and she's been doing that for years. She's managed to, for example, go on food stamps when her husband made the kind of money he made. They own numerous properties all over in several states. These are not poor people.
Okay, he said that she's been conning everybody for very many. That's a really, really serious allegation. And this is different than the clip you might have seen last night with Duty Ron, because he played the one from Cuomo. This is the one with Brian Enton that I think aired a little bit before the Cuomo one. The food stamps have nothing to do with conning anybody. The son gets that as part of his package of aid from the county or the state. So that's a little disingenuous.
But Melanie, as an attorney, can he just get up there and make these kind of statements?
Yeah, we're gonna
some kind of.
Trust me, it gets worse. So let's yeah, it gets worse. We didn't even get into the meat of it yet. Go ahead.
And they've managed to raise 40 at the last count today, $44,000 in the GoFundMe, and they're not victims. This is all a big put on, and what makes it worse is that it is overwhelmingly likely that this woman, Miss Ellerup, and her the other adults, certainly Miss Ellerup, knew very well what was going on in that house with Mr. Heuerman downstairs in the basement with sex workers, and he had numerous.
But how can you say that though? I mean, John, that's a really big allegation to make. I mean, the police have said that they didn't know anything, and we've seen in other cases with serial killers that the families don't know anything. These guys are sickos and masterminds and psychotic, and they can compartmentalize. I mean, how can you go on national TV and say that you know that they knew something?
I can say that for several reasons. First of all, she lived in that little tiny house, and according to her own lawyers, there's no soundproof room downstairs. It would be virtually impossible in this day and age where they've together for 27 years in that little tiny house, that she had no knowledge with cell phones and the internet. She had no knowledge whatsoever of what he was up to all those years downstairs. That's the.
Okay, I want to stop this for 1 second because I want to address this soundproof room in the basement. The attorneys have come out and said there was no soundproof room in the basement. There's been a lot of speculation about that. I am going to submit to you that this vault, surrounded by giant cinder blocks and ensconced with a heavy steel door, could have been naturally soundproof. I understand that maybe they're trying to use semantics to say that nobody went down there and soundproofed it specifically, like it was some sort of a jam room where bands would practice, which I know my son did when he had a band. They would soundproof the room. It may have been naturally soundproofed. So to say that there was no soundproof room, I think could be a little disingenuous, because that vault may have been by nature soundproof. That's my thoughts. You can let me know what you think in the comments or in the, oh yes. Oh, thank you, Scott, backing me up on this one. Exactly. Yeah. Maybe there was no room that was specifically soundproof for a purpose, but it may have been naturally soundproof. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. All right, that I put up by accident, but let's move on because it even gets worse. Now he claims to have a witness. So let's hear what he has to say.
The first problem we have with this. The second problem is the way she's behaved is completely antithetical to what a person would do under similar circumstances if they were not involved.
Stop. How can we speculate about how anybody would react or respond to anything? And I hate when people do that, because it is impossible to speculate how anybody would behave in any situation involving this amount of trauma. Meredith.
Yeah. And yes, I mean, I think that when he's not taking into account that she's likely just in the stage of shock, the very, just how this would take so long to process the complexity of this, the betrayal, all of these things. I mean, you just need to go with what feels familiar. So it makes sense that she would just go back home.
Right. And a lot of people, I see there's a lot of chatter also that because the wife has not made a public statement that she feels sorry about the victims, that she must somehow be involved, or she must somehow have known. How come she didn't make a public statement apologizing, I guess, for his behavior or showing some sort of sympathy for the victims? I mean, I would imagine that this is very similar. You go through like the 7 stages of grief, denial, yes. Shock. Yes. It's probably hasn't even entered into her mind. She's just trying to process exactly what is going on with her life being turned upside down.
But do you think that maybe even her attorney would tell her not to do that? Do you know what I mean? Like maybe the attorneys that she has see what state she's actually in and are maybe like, maybe this isn't what we should do right now, like putting something out.
Yeah. And any attorney will tell you not to speak to the media and not to speak to the press. So maybe she hasn't had an opportunity to. They could have, given a statement, but again, anything she used will be twisted and turned around. And I don't think that just because she hasn't made a statement about the victims doesn't mean that she feels horrible about what happened, and that I don't think that it means that she's absolutely involved. But let's hear John Ray go on a little bit more.
You know, she not one of those people, her and or her children have said anything by way of sympathy for any of the victims of the.
And he's an attorney. He should know better. He tells his clients not to talk to anybody all the time. Okay.
Serial killer, no matter what. They've just completely ignored that. They sit on the front porch, they laugh, they give the European middle finger to the press.
Well, listen, I mean, all the pictures I've seen them looking very sad outside, and maybe they're just, I mean, could they still just be in denial and shock and hoping that it's not true? And then the thing you said about her not knowing if he had escorts over there. I mean, people just have weird marriages. Maybe they had some kind of weird arrangement where he was allowed to have the escorts downstairs, having sex with the escorts downstairs. But that doesn't mean.
Okay, that, like, Brian Enton is a little bit of a reach, but
well, I kind of, did you see me? I was like, well, I can kind of understand that. I mean, if you could get to a point, and I've worked with couples before that, you know, if there's a lot of control and a lot of stress around intimacy, she might just be like, he's horrible if he isn't taken care of. And so maybe I don't think that that's what's going on, but I can see it a little bit. It is a reach, but
yeah,
you know, some couples too.
Yeah. Low Stevens, all people are psychologically complicated. She might've been emotionally abused or worse for years, and also know more than she's saying. Both can be true. Absolutely. 100%. Both of those things can be true.
Yeah.
They coexist.
Yeah. Someone said, yeah.
As that people have weird arrangements.
Yeah.
Could be true. We don't know. All right. He's not done yet. So let's see what else he has to say.
That she knew that he was a killer.
That doesn't mean she didn't. And she should be a suspect. When 2 of her hairs are found on the tape wrapping up 2 of the victims, she's at least a suspect. But there's also another factor, which I had the good fortune to come across.
Okay, here's his bombshell now. He had the good fortune to come across a witness. Wait, hold on, wait for it.
That is a witness. And there is a witness who is very credible. I know I pull rank by saying that because I'm 41 years in the business, and I've done many cross-examinations and 33 different homicides I've been involved in one way or another. So, I bring that to the table. I've examined this witness for hours, and she is credible, and in detail she is credible. And she's not coming forward with her name at this point, and I'm going to respect that.
So
that's my job.
What is the witness? What did the witness tell you though? Like, tell us about this witness.
What I hear unquestionably is that Rex Heuerman was bringing sex workers frequently into his home over the years, spent a small fortune on him, and that the wife was clearly very aware of this and even indicated it actively at some point. So I have that plus all these inferences that you can draw from the way this woman has behaved in this whole thing. And when you put the 2 together, it's pretty hard to deny that she should.
Okay, they could have found a nicer picture of her. I mean, that's just right.
They do it on purpose. I feel like,
be a suspect. Perhaps the police did not consider her a suspect initially because she seemed to have alibis for when 3 of those women disappeared. But those alibis are fungible, like anything else. And if she was away in Iceland on a trip and so on, do we know when these girls were actually killed, the day they were killed? Do we know how long they were kept before they were buried? Do we know whether they were still alive and then were killed later on? You don't know any of those things. So you really need to be suspicious. And that's what I'm saying is you need to be suspicious.
I understand what you're saying, being suspicious and keeping an open mind. And I'm sure hopefully the police are with everything involving this case. It just seems like we don't really have the evidence right now to call out the family like that.
Thank you for watching. Go.
Ooh, okay, so those are some pretty smoking allegations. He better have a really good faith basis for saying those things, or he is going to be sued for slander, defamation. There's going to be major lawsuits against him. So I hope that whoever his witness is talking to law enforcement, because that is just
wow,
bombastic what he said.
Well,
and outrageous.
And while
better have good proof.
I know, but I'm sorry that I take it where I'm like, okay, look at his behavior. Like, as he's saying, you know, she's you know, reputable witness and everything. His phone's going off during an interview. It's like he doesn't even have enough, and he has to brag about himself. I've been in this business for 41 years and it's like, okay, buddy. I don't know. It's I think that like it's overcompensation a little bit.
Yeah, a lot of lawyers are like that, quite honestly. But yeah, I think that he better have some serious proof, because that's a pretty harsh thing. And in fact, I don't know if the Cuomo show was first or the Brian Enton show, but they're both on the same network. So they actually kept him around for the second show. So they weren't afraid of what he had to say or broadcasting it. So that was a little bit crazy, I thought, last night when I saw that live. Wendy says the police have watched his every move for over a year. If she was involved, they would have arrested her too. They verified she was not around when the murders were committed.
That's a great point.
Yeah. So listen, it kind of reminds me, it's not absolutely 100% unheard of, because it reminds me of the Jerry Sandusky case where he was committing horrific acts in his basement with children and boys, and his wife was sitting right upstairs. So it's not to say that it's impossible, but to make it sound like she's a suspect in some way, that she had a hand in these killings.
It's like, wow. I mean, I'm just personally just so sick of just because of who you're married to, these women are just, oh, she must have known. I mean, a lot of times people are used and deceived. I mean, it's just, I feel like, aren't we in 2023 by now? Like, do we really have to go and attack the woman and make all of these assumptions about her?
Right.
It's just.
Right. 100%.
I'm over it.
See if there's any more questions in the chat. I just feel like, you know, also, you know, she may be in denial. You know, maybe she knew that he was hiring women and she didn't want to sleep with them anyway. So she was kind of like, whatever. I mean, but people stay in marriages for a lot of different reasons.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. A lot of different reasons. And sorry, I just saw a comment that we're being a little too biased, but like one way. But this is truly how I think I see it. I think that, you know, there's a lot with someone who is able to kill multiple women, burner phones, pursue them, manipulate them, taunt a woman 20 years ago at a casino. I mean, he's sick.
Yeah, to say the least. And yeah, let's go back to that burner phone thing. So if you find out that your husband or your boyfriend or your significant other has 7 burner phones, I'm not saying that she knew about this. Is that like red flag city?
Right.
Like, why would a guy have a bunch of burner phones?
Right. Right.
Lo says we'll definitely find out more once people start to feel safe enough to talk. Yes. And the district attorney and Rodney Harrison, actually the Suffolk County Police Commissioner, has come out and said that the sheriff's department is doing interviews with a lot of the escorts that are currently incarcerated in Suffolk County Prison. So they're trying to find out if anybody knows anything or anybody had any interactions with him, you know, and things like that. You know, we can sit here and speculate all day about whether we think she knew, but for this guy to come out and make these allegations, I mean,
right. Wow. I mean, I'm sorry, but it's clearly it's financial though. Like he had financial power over his wife. I mean, to be living in that small of a house with whatever he made, I mean, he was spending it doing these crimes. I mean, she was just like in such a, she's a victim. I mean, she didn't have any control probably. I mean, I just see a lot of people that are agreeing that when it comes to money, I mean, you don't know a lot. Sometimes couples don't share at all, like what they spend it on. He was probably very believable too.
Yeah. Yep. Our whip says if the wife did know, she was probably scared to say anything. Maybe after the divorce, she can be questioned. Well, in New York, we have something called spousal privilege, and either spouse can invoke the privilege. So any communications that were had during the marriage would be privilege, and all he has to do is invoke the privilege, and she would never be able to testify about anything during the marriage. Yeah.
Are you serious?
I mean, after a divorce, you can testify about things that happened after the divorce, but during the course of the marriage, there are very, very few exceptions to that. The reason, for those of you who have been following the Montgomery case with Duty Ron and I, the reason that Kayla Montgomery is allowed to testify against Adam Montgomery in that horrific case in New Hampshire is because Kayla and Adam were never married. And she struck a deal also with them. So pretty horrifying. Yeah. Our Annie Beebe says, I agree. RH was a narcissistic, manipulative.
Yes.
You know what?
Mm-hmm.
Hello, it's me. Oh, that's a good Taylor Swift. I was married 31 years until I found out about my spouse sex addicting and using Backpage, Craigslist, Ashley Madison before internet. He was using escorts. And wow. And you had no idea. Yeah.
Yeah.
Luckily, he wasn't a serial killer. So, yeah, I mean, it's possible that she didn't know about these things either. And that he lived a double life, you know, and that all of this stuff is new to her, that she had no idea. If she wasn't snooping, I mean, there are a lot of women who become detectives when they think something is off, right?
Right.
And they start going through his phone, going through his computer. If she was just oblivious to all of that.
Or afraid to even snoop, or too sick because she has cancer to even snoop or think about anything other than herself and her children. I mean, it's like, just to think that just because somebody's living in the same home, you know everything that they're doing. It's just silly.
Yeah, it feels like they just live two separate lives, you know? Lucy Bell says one of the main reasons it's so hard for DV victims to leave is financial. Legislation must change to address financial abuse. The number one cause of homelessness for women is DV. Yep. Okay. They hide and mask their whole life, so a normal person won't pick up on it or suspect, because normal people don't think like a serial killer. Right?
Right.
I mean, this takes us a little bit into narcissism too. I mean, there could be a whole bunch of narcissism and narcissistic traits or borderline personality disorder, if you want to explain any of that to the viewers and how some of those characteristics can manifest themselves.
Well, I think that a lot of times with the narcissistic piece of this would be that, I mean, a lot of times they feel as if there's a group of people that they're above, and then there's another lower class, you know, people that aren't as good as them. They say one of the best things to do is, if you suspect that somebody's a narcissist, you ask them, like, you can go and, like, when they don't know that you're onto them, you can kind of have a conversation and be like, so, you know, this group of people, they're just so far below us. We're just so smart, right? And just, they get high on feeling as if they're above everyone else and that they are special, and really, like, they're never going to get caught. Can you tell me more about that? Did he suspect that he was going to one day get caught? What do you think?
He was actually, when they published his Google searches, he was Googling, and I wrote it down because I thought it was a crazy statistic. He Googled over 200 times in 14 months the investigation, what was happening with the investigation. Going on the website, he was searching the victims' family members, trying to locate them, trying to find pictures of them.
Oh,
the reason that they arrested him when they did, and this is what they've said, is that they had a feeling he had a burner phone, at least one, and they had a feeling that he was going to target someone else. And I think that's why they grabbed him when they did. Just a quick shout out to David Price. Thank you for the $14.99 super chat. He legit suggested he kidnapped women while Asa was in Iceland and kept them alive until she got back so she could join in the fun. And he knows hairs can float everywhere in a house. He's a nut. I don't know, when did he suggest that? Where did he suggest that? Tell me how you know that. I haven't seen that information. Oh, you're saying that John Ray suggested that. Yeah. Yeah,
Oh.
that is super creepy. And yeah, I think that's kind of what he was suggesting. And he better have some pretty good evidence of that, or the lawsuit is going to be crazy.
Crazy. Oh, somebody just said take a narcissist to a restaurant. Yep. They're rude to the waiter. I mean, you know, you can see those signs, but I want to point out really quickly about Ted Bundy. He chose a specific type of victim. It was, you know, a woman with hair usually parted down the middle, like mousy brown hair, who looked nothing like his wife. Now, they've said that when he was rejected and supposedly humiliated by a woman that had mousy brown hair and her hair parted down the middle, and those are the type of women that he went after. So when we think about antisocial, borderline, or I would say narcissistic personality disorder, I mean, to have someone reject them is just, they would think the audacity to reject me, you know? I mean, so the anger that would develop inside of them, I mean, I can see where it would lead to these type of serial killer behaviors.
And how they would maybe like
choose their victims. Yep.
Tina Lucille says, I'm going to be brutally honest here, so I apologize in advance if I offend anyone. I'm finding it difficult to have any sympathy for the wife. I do, however, feel awful for the adult children. That is a valid opinion. And we are, you know, I like to open up dialogue and differences of opinion, as long as everyone is respectful to everybody. Nobody's attacking anybody in the chat or in the comments afterwards. I love to go through the comments, but I would love to just tell everyone to please be respectful to me and to each other, and no personal attacks.
I mean, I hear you. I mean, if let's say, I hope I'm not wrong. I mean, I hope that isn't the case if she knew. And then, yes, I do agree. I would feel so bad for her children. That's just awful, because then nobody was protecting them. But, you know, that's just my point of view.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's hard to decide how anybody would react in that type of situation.
Yeah.
Scott says, please give the old thumbs up. Yeah, please give the old thumbs up. There's like 900 people, I think, in the chat. Oh my gosh, we're over 1,000. We have 1,024 people watching.
What?
How many thumbs up do we have, Scott?
Oh my gosh.
Not a lot. I don't know, but I'm sure that if everyone gave the thumbs up, it's really going to help the YouTube algorithm.
So I just want to state, let's look at this man, his stature. That's really intimidating. I mean, he could just like move his body, do some type of aggressive posturing, you know, just in a way that would scare her or keep her from not saying anything, you know, or I don't even think that she probably knew, but I wouldn't. I mean, I just feel so bad for those victims, how scared they must have felt. And
they were all very small in stature, these women. They were all 5 feet or less.
Oh, God.
So could you imagine? Yeah.
That is ridiculous.
He definitely targeted a specific type. Yes, and I agree with you. On your coffee break, do we even have a single passion for the victims' families that focus on this guy's?
Yeah.
Yes. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about what it would be like to be the sister, the 15-year-old sister that Heuerman killed Melissa Barthelemy, took Melissa Barthelемy's phone, and with her cell phone, after he had killed her sister, called her 15-year-old sister on the phone and taunted her and said, you know, do you know what I did with you? You're never going to see her again. And he kept making these harassing, horrible phone calls to this 15-year-old girl. And so now she's got to be, this was 13 years ago, she's got to be 28 years old. How do you ever overcome something like that? How do you ever overcome the loss of your child, the loss of your sister, the loss of your mom in such a violent, brutal way, regardless of what your occupation was at the time? Let's talk a little bit about the victims' families. I can't imagine what they're going through.
I can't imagine. I mean, it's just sick and awful. And knowing how they were killed. I mean, the images, just even pop up in my own mind. I mean, I'm a visual type of person. And so it's like, I just see that. I mean, and if you knew, I mean, it's like your loved one, what he did to them. And then the harassment, I mean, and it lines right up with what he's done over the years. I mean, that is, and let me just say for a second, I'm sorry to go back to the wife, but do we have any phone calls where she's doing this?
We don't know of any. We do know that attorney that we watched before, John Ray, claims that he was getting some crazy phone calls recently before Heuerman was arrested, saying some things about his daughter, about John Ray's daughter, like, I see your daughter. I see what she's, and describing what she's wearing, and that she was eating pizza, and that there may have also been a woman's voice in the background. If anybody knows the specifics of that,
yeah, let us know.
Put it in the chat, because yeah, but aside from that, there's never been any indication that there was any woman involved in these phone calls. But he made phone calls to at least 2 of the victims' families. And another creepy, weird thing that he did when he had their cell phones is called their voicemail.
What?
To get their voicemails. After they went missing, he still had their phones. He was calling their voicemail to see, I guess, if anybody was looking for them.
Wow.
And that's how he eventually was caught, because they triangulated all those phones, and his burner phones, the victim's phones, and his personal cell phone were always in the same location at the same time, either near Penn Station where he worked or near Massapequa where he lived. And they could not find one instance where those phones were in a different location. So that is part of the forensic evidence that they've used to indict him in this anyway.
Wow. I mean, I think that he probably at some point really thought that he was he was really good at this, and he was going to be untouchable, and he wasn't going to get found out.
Yeah.
But this is so calculated. I mean, this is a person who just knows how to be, it's just so manipulative, like knows what to do to fly under the radar. I mean, just looking at how big an ogre, like, I mean, really, he looked on that walk, the perp walk, and then compared to him, that video that you showed, I mean, it's like a dorky, big, overweight guy in that one video. And then you see this massive man in the other, and I think that he was really, really twisted and probably had different voices, different movements, all of that. I think this is what they do. This is what they do.
Incredibly sick and twisted and scary. Thank you, Joe Laverick, for the $5 super chat. I believe his wife was relieved when he was taken into custody to file for divorce so quickly. I bet she wanted to get out for a long time. Yeah, she did file for divorce within a week of him being taken into custody. So, I mean, that speaks volumes about their relationship. And maybe she felt that he was finally locked up, and she was finally, could breathe in a sense. Right?
Yeah.
She could finally breathe. So do we have any questions in the chat? If you have any questions for Meredith, do #Mayor. #Melanie. Somebody said he did not make those calls. Wait, David says he didn't make those calls. He was being watched by the FBI for 6 months before Ray said those calls happened. So there's that. Yeah. Okay. You're right. It could be a copycat. It could be somebody just, somebody else. Maybe John Ray has a lot of enemies, and there's other people out there stalking him.
Oh, wait, tell me a little bit more about that. So about a copycat. You just think that somebody heard that he did that, and
yeah, that somebody may have been calling John Ray, because really those phone calls that he reported had nothing to do specifically with Heuerman or the Gilgo Beach killings. I don't think it was just somebody who was calling him saying, I see your daughter. I see she's eating pizza. I see what she's wearing. So he's been a criminal attorney for 40 years. He may have some other enemies. Mr. Ray described the calls on Harvard lawyer Lee's channel. He speculated it was a recording of a woman's voice that the person played, not necessarily anything to do with Asa. But did the person identify themselves in any way as even being related to these this case? Even HM says John Ray seems to be losing his mind, to be honest. So,
I mean,
could be.
Don't disagree.
Wait, Melanie. Dater. Isn't it possible that he was super nice? Yeah, as if that Rex was super nice. I mean, he had to somehow lure these women into going with him for the night.
Of course, and to keep his job as an architect in New York City, you have to be good at what you do. Like, this is someone who probably has a very high IQ, and he probably was really nice, and people felt comfortable with him, obviously, at his job. Because there weren't any reports, right? Is there anything that I don't know around that, like with his job, or he was fine?
I mean, I think he was self-employed, so there might not have been any, reports of misconduct on the job. I'm sure that the media would have dug into whether or not there were any reports of DV or any, prior law enforcement involvement being called to the house for any sort of abuse or any incidents at the house. Jen Evelyn says the caller also played a clip of the news coverage of Gilgo from years ago. Okay, well, there you go. If that's accurate, then they did try and connect it to the Gilgo case, but who knows? There's like a lot of wackos out there that could do something like that. And yeah, he was being watched at the time. So, the fact that it.
I mean, also think about, yeah. Somebody said my father was really nice in public, but until you got behind closed doors. And that does line up with someone who has narcissistic traits, I would say, because I can't like put a full-blown diagnosis on it, but traits of that are because they care about image. They care about how they're perceived by society, by the world. That matters more to them sometimes than their own family members. And they will come home and degrade their family members. So how do we know that this wife wasn't abused in that way and degraded and felt less than? And he was really kind and dorky and whatever in the daytime, basically, at his job.
Yeah, and we could say that about addicts too, and people with narcissistic personality disorder. They're really, really nice to strangers and other people that they interact with on a daily basis, but they can be horrific to the ones they love. It's almost like there are, the old Jekyll and Hyde, like dual personalities.
Yes, absolutely.
Peter Dater said my last message was sent too early. Super nice as a way to overcompensate. What if he had regrets and therefore he tried to be really nice to compensate for all the bad things he did?
Sure. Absolutely.
I can see that.
I can see that too. Yeah.
I could totally see that.
Someone is pointing out how Suffolk. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm still so mad. That Suffolk was so corrupt and incompetent that they didn't even follow up on the tip describing probably the most conspicuous. Yeah, and I've repeatedly voiced my opinion on this as well. Yeah, this tip was buried in the file since 2010. They had a description of him from Amber Costello's roommate, who was the last person to see Amber Costello alive, that he was 6'4" to 6'6", that he drove a first-generation green Chevy Avalanche. They had all of this information. I said I could have done this search in my law office, a DMV check. All the guys in a certain area between 6'4" and 6 foot. Trust me, there's not a lot of them. There's not a lot of guys that tall out there around here. Anyway, I'll tell you that the pool is pretty small. And when you cross-check that with registrations of green Chevy Avalanches that were built in, I think 2002 was the exact year of this car.
Wow.
And then you cross-check that with the guys. Could have been done. And the state, I think it was a state trooper who finally came on the task force in 2022, opened the file, put these things together, and had his information within 6 weeks. And that's when they started looking at him.
Are you kidding me?
Nope. So if this guy has been killing, unaliving people, which is what they like to say on YouTube, right? Since 2010, when they could have caught him in 2010, I got a real problem with that.
Wow.
And I think that, I've read a lot about serial killers. I've listened to a lot of experts talk about serial. They just don't stop.
Right.
It's like pedos. They just don't stop.
No.
The statistics on that, or that they have already committed an offense on a child 100 times before they're caught.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And there is this thing about the feel, they're like, once they get away with it, they're like seeking it again and they crave it. And it's just, it does overlap a lot with addiction, but it's like, it's something that they can't let go of and they want to feel it again. That power, control, dominance over these women, just like some of the things that he'd search, so despicable. He was looking to, degrade and to feel power.
Yeah, and little to no impulse control, right?
Yeah.
There are serial killers that took a hiatus. I think BTK took a 10-year hiatus. But I think that when we find out, when all is said and done here, we're going to find out that he's been doing this since he was probably in his 20s. Yep. Margaret Hearn says, like crack. Drugs are bad. Drugs are bad. But again, he was a gambler. They could connect him to Atlantic City. I heard, and I haven't really seen much confirmation of this, but they were looking into him for some stuff in Las Vegas, another gambling destination, another place where escorts are plenty, another place where he owned property.
Wow.
So
he was doing things on the DL. Come on now.
Yeah. Like a secret life.
Yes, absolutely. And spending his money that way. Makes sense now.
Louisa, do you think there are others since it seems 2010 last found? Yeah. You know what I think? I think since those were found in 2010, he had to find a new dumping ground, because the dumping ground that he was using since long before that was no longer any good. And my thought is that they're going to be able to connect him, hopefully, to the Manorville butcher cases. Those women were dismembered, and those go back to 19. I'm just looking at my notes here. 1996 at least. That's when Karen Vergata's legs washed up on Fire Island. She was just finally identified about a week ago. And then her torso was found in Manorville about 15 years later, or her skull. There were a couple of torsos that were found in Manorville in 2000. Valerie Mack was found in 2000. She was a Philly escort. They found her torso in September of 2000 in Manorville. And Jessica Taylor, her torso was found in Manorville in 2003. So serial killers, from what I've read, I believe they evolve. Had he been dismembering in the beginning, may have become too much work. And he was thinking, oh, you know what? They're not finding these things anyway. Why do I need to go through all this trouble?
Right.
But I tell you what, if they ripped up all the tiles in that bathroom and they cut out the side of the tub and they took the drain traps, because the attorneys did say that they had no running water because they confiscated the trap of the drain in the tub and the trap of the drain in the sink. They were definitely looking for some kind of forensic evidence in there, like blood, hair, fibers, flesh, whatever could be left in there. Tony, thank you so much for the super chat. Tony says, hi, Sweden in the house. Hello, Sweden.
Hi, Sweden.
Why did the attorney Como say that he think Asa RH wife is with him and knows about everything? I think you're saying why. Yeah, we played that clip earlier. I don't know if you were here, but it's the attorney who made those allegations is the attorney for Shannon Gilbert's family and for Jessica Taylor's family. And he's claiming that he has a witness who he has either polygraphed, or he says he has questioned her for many, many hours and finds her to be credible, that is going to say, or that does say, that Asa knew about it. She was complicit in it. And in fact, he even went so far as to say that Rex was having relations with these escorts in the basement while Asa was upstairs, and she knew about it, and that she should be a suspect. So that's what he's saying. Seems a little whack to me, but I don't know. Mellow One, attorney Melanie Small, do you think the brother is involved? Well, here's an interesting little tidbit. The brother, Craig, has the same physical description as Rex. They're both around the same size. They're both really big guys. Craig did time. He's got a record. Do I think he's involved? I don't know. But here's something that is very suspect. Rex had that green Chevy Avalanche that we know he used in 2010 because of the witness. Gave that truck to his brother, who lives in South Carolina. So when the law enforcement went to arrest Rex, they went down and they seized that green Chevy Avalanche still in his brother's possession in South Carolina. Like, why did they still have it?
Yeah.
Was he giving it to his brother as like a big FU? Like, okay, this is.
Oh my gosh, right?
Were they involved in it together? And then he goes out and buys himself a second Chevy Avalanche in a different color. So this car had all the bells and whistles of everything that he needed to maybe keep small women in the bed of it. You know, he could have backed that thing right up to his house. If you look at the house, the garage is right in there, and then taken it in the house or around the back, or we don't know.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point. Yeah.
There's a lot of stuff. I do not know when he moved to South Carolina. I do not know that. I don't have the information. But if anybody does, hi, Carly. Nice to see you. I don't think his brother is involved. We don't know. I mean, I think there's a lot more that we're going to find out on this case. I mean, buckle up, you guys, because we still don't even know what they found in the house. We don't know if they found trophies. We don't, but they went out of there with a whole hell of a lot of stuff, trucks and trucks full. And they found 2 storage units that he used. They searched those. And during one of the searches, they had the Suffolk County Medical Examiner's truck there. We have photos of that. So.
Wow. I'm seeing in the chat that there was a lot of land too, where his brother lived. So we've got Vegas, the land in South Carolina. Is that what you said?
Yeah.
And then isn't there another place other than his home that he would go to or frequent, or that he owned, like a rental?
Vegas, South Carolina. And he has addresses like in New Jersey and Massachusetts. There was also, I mean, if you want to get crazy, there was a whole string of escorts that were killed in New Bedford, Massachusetts, called the New Bedford Highway Killings, which were in 1988 March. They started right before Craig went to prison and continued through April of 89 after Craig went to prison. And Rex has an address not too far from where those bodies were found. So I'm not saying he's involved in that, but I'm saying I'm sure they're looking into it.
Wow. And I wonder how frequently the family went to these different places.
Yeah.
Somebody's saying there's water access down in South Carolina. They might be referencing something else. But when I think about that, I'm like, well, if they don't have running water right now in their home, but it's like, did they even know about all of these other properties?
Or maybe they mean water access because all of these bodies were found near the water. Right.
So
you have the ones in Atlantic City were also found by, but yeah, it can mean 2 different things. We're also found by the water. I've read that serial killers pick their dumping grounds based on sound. So the sounds may have been comforting to him, like the sounds of the ocean, the sounds of the birds that are near the ocean, you know, the seagulls, the sounds. So those New Bedford highway killings were also done right near the water.
Wow.
I don't know. Food for thought.
That is.
Sarah Gray, Rex visited Asa's sister in Alaska. Yeah. And also something that's interesting, Oblivious Benson. Oh, here you are. You're here. Told us on the show that we did the other night that he had a lot of IP in activity in Alaska, right, Kat? Oblivious says he has a timeshare in Vegas, then houses everywhere else belonging to the family or a past address. Okay. But he does own property across the street from the brother in South Carolina, acres and acres of it. Yeah, 23 acres, I believe. CCCC.
23 acres
in Chester, South Carolina.
Man, this was like a whole operation to him. This is what he was spending all the money on, everything.
Yeah, I mean, he really had he didn't take any pride in the way his house looked.
No. And that's where his family lived. And I bet they didn't go to all of these locations either. You know, I don't think that they got to enjoy going to Vegas or something. Like, I mean, I don't know, but I'm just speculating, you know?
Right. And also, was there a reason he never wanted to get rid of that house?
Right.
There's too much stuff buried in the backyard, you know? He backs onto a preserve, I think. And also they dug up his backyard, law enforcement, with backhoes and all kinds of heavy equipment. And we still don't really know what they found there. So
when will we find out, Melanie? When will we know this? I need to know this now.
Now you're investigating. Well, you'll come to court with me. I will tell you this, Meredith, that when I went to court, because I went to the court for his second appearance, which is when he came in and they just discussed like some preliminary just discovery matters.
Okay.
And I'm not like a hippy dippy spiritual type person. I was sitting about 3 rows back from where he walked into the courtroom. He walked in a little side door. You could feel the evil entering the room. Like the energy was it. I just thinking about it right now, it makes my hair stand up on my arms. Like the evil walking into the room was palpable.
Wow.
It was insane.
I mean, have you saged yourself since you've gotten back from
Oh my
there?
God, should we do
we
need to do
absolutely.
we need
Look
to do
at this. I have
smudging?
mine right here. I have
mine
cheerful sage. So you say that I'm not a hippy dippy spiritual person. I'm like, I am. So I bet those vibes, you gotta, sage it.
I know. And I do actually have a sage candle right over there too, but I am not usually that affected by, I mean, I guess I am affected by energy, but
yeah,
that's how compelling it was. You know, that's how palpable it was. Anne says, accused perp is a shrewd character, cunning. I'm thinking he didn't bother with trophies. He used the victims, got them in his car after the paid encounter, strangled them, and left them. It could be, except, and I would agree with you, except that shoes. All the shoes were missing from the Atlantic City 4, which was also another 4 that were clustered near the water. And law enforcement has said about the Gilgo 4 that they were missing a significant piece of clothing. They've never said what it was, but I've seen a lot of footage of one sneaker showing up and a lot of footage. So if they were missing shoes, there is some speculation that those could be the trophies. And who knows? Yeah, there is supposed to be a list of everything they took in the house. When does that get released? I don't know. Depends on how long it's going to take them to do it. They're going to have to turn it over in discovery.
Yeah.
So they were provided at that first conference with 8 terabytes of discovery, something like 2,500 massive amounts of data.
Wow.
And so it's going to take them time to compile that list, to test stuff, and to get it off to the defense. But I think he's got trophies for sure too. That's what Sheila says, and I think so too. So if you guys have any further questions, I should let Meredith go because we've already been talking for like an hour
past my bedtime.
Your bedtime. Let's just talk about your book for a second, because you do have a book coming out. It's not been released yet, but it is on Kindle, and I'm going to link it in the description. So tell everybody about your book.
This doesn't even feel like real life.
Go for it.
Thank you. I'm sorry to interrupt. No, it doesn't even feel like real life to say that I have a book coming out, but this is something that I'm so passionate about, and it's called Hey Addiction, Thanks for Nothing: How to Love an Addict Without Losing Your Mind. So this is for all of you out there that have been affected by addiction, which I don't know anybody who doesn't know someone who has dealt with an addiction. And there's so many of us that are living in the shadow of its harm, that are just collateral damage, and we don't know how to really get our lives separate from the addict, because, we care about them. We love them. We want them to thrive. But, you are just watching someone destroying their life, and it's sad and it's painful and it's frustrating. I mean, frustrating is an understatement. I mean, it can evoke so much rage. So this really is a guide to understanding the limits of taking care of them, how to set boundaries. And it also is very raw. I mean, I drop any type of veneer of professionalism, because it's such a messed up situation addiction is, to just like going through this. I've just seen so much pain, but a lot of times the loved ones will act in ways that are out of our character, trying to save the other person. So that might be stealing a car out of their drug dealer's house if they're there, like trying to like keep them from access, or going down and measuring an alcohol bottle and being like, okay, I took 5 ounces out of it, I've got to put 5 ounces of water back in it, and like diluting things, thinking that that's going to stop them from drinking. I mean, there is like a level of delusion that you go through when you care about someone so much and you don't want them to lose their life to addiction. So there are a lot of like gritty drawings that I do. I share personal experiences, as well as, I mean, it is self-help memoir, but the self-help is, there's at a point where I have people write a eulogy to their loved one. And it's not to, hope that something like that would happen. It's to prepare for and acknowledge your own trauma and your own pain, and how you can grieve the loss of the person that existed before their addiction. So it's very heartfelt. It comes from, you know, deep pain and sadness that I've gone through myself. And along with the clients that I've worked with over the years, friends that have dealt with this, there's a huge population. And when I was going through this in my marriage, losing, you know, my marriage and my little family due to addiction, I would look up all of these books trying to get help, even though this is what I do for a living, which is so funny because I thought I would be exempt or I would know what to do exactly to get my husband out of any addiction. And it's like, no, I'm powerless. Addiction doesn't care about your socioeconomic status. It doesn't care about your gender. It doesn't care about any of those things. So when I was, you know, writing this, looking for books to help me even, I felt like everything was for the person with the addiction and how we can help them and how we can support them in their journey and what they're going through. And I'm like, but what about me? Because the loved ones of addicts, we experience trauma, we experience a lot of pain and put ourselves in situations that, you know, we probably don't want to admit, trying to help them, you know?
Yeah,
so that's
play detective and, you know,
yes.
like a person that you hate that you never thought you would ever be, and just hating and becoming the worst version of yourself by trying to help someone else who will never ever get help until they decide they want.
It's up to them. That's been the hardest thing. I would beg and plead and cry and manipulate and do all of these things. And it's like, you know, you really have to surrender because it's up to them. Nobody wants to be forced. It's not going to stick if they're forced into something or if they, you know, are being treated in a certain way. They have to come to the decision on their own.
Yeah, there is Al-Anon. Yes, there is Al-Anon.
Yes, Al-Anon, Nar-Anon.
This book, and I've read your book, and I love the you know, the workbook aspect to it, where you can really like do some like simple like exercises. There's not a lot of resources out there for people who love addicts, and you know, you just think to yourself, why can't they change? If they love me enough, they would stop. If they realize that, you know, the devastation and the ripple effects that this is having on the family, why can't they just be the person that they used to be? And it's like it's almost like it's there's nothing harder than grieving the loss of a person who is still alive.
Still alive. Yes, I felt like a widow. And it was like, because that person, like I see their body, they're physically in front of me, but like the person they used to be is nowhere to be found. It's like a zombie, but it's so disorienting because you can't even compute it in your minds, like how this is the same person that you fell in love with or that you love.
Right. And where did they go? And what happened? And why am I crazy? I feel like I'm going crazy because it's crazy making. Somebody asked if it's on Audible. Is your book on Audible?
I think if it does well enough, I'll eventually get to have it on Audible, but no, right now it's not. So please pre-order it. And also it is on Kindle. There has been a delay with the Amazon pre-order link, but it comes out September 15th. We have time, and I will update you all as the pre-order link comes up, but you can definitely pre-order it on Kindle, also on my publisher's website, but we really want to go for a bestseller of some kind because I want to help people. I think families need to heal, and I'm prepping my parents for this because there's things about our family that are in it, but you know what? Shame just breeds shame. And we got to bring things into the light and share our experiences so that we don't feel alone in it, you know?
So I would love to do a show with you just about this specific topic. Would you come back and do a
show
maybe next week about this? Okay. So anybody, if you want to do a deeper dive into this, Hey Addiction, thanks for nothing, and the ripple effects on the family and the people who love addicts, please put a 5 in the chat. We'll just do something different. Put a 5 in the chat and I will convince Meredith to come back and do a show about that.
And 5 is if you're into numerology, that's my number. But
oh, it is. I really didn't even know that.
No, I know that's so funny that you put 5.
Like, you know, maybe we do.
I think we're totally on the same wavelength. Yeah, there's something going on.
Yeah.
Oh, see some
All right.
flowers.
So I'm going to say goodbye to you for now. I'm going to stick around and listen to some of the, and just answer some of the questions. I know you have a, you know, sick.
I got a sick little boy
of your baby.
Yes.
So, but there's a lot of 5s in the chat. So we're going to set something up for next week, and hopefully you guys will come back and watch, because I love this topic too. And this is really why I was so drawn to you, because of your kindness and your willingness to help loved ones of addicts and alcoholics. And
they're my crew.
So I will say goodbye to you now as I address more of these questions. Thank you. Everyone say goodbye to Meredith.
Bye. Thank you all. Thank you for having me. Thank you. This was amazing. This was fun.
Of course. You can come back anytime.
Okay. Thank you.
Bye.
All right. Bye, you all. Bye.
Oh, and I'm back. All right. I'm still here. Okay, I don't know what happened there, but let me go back to a couple of comments that I wanted to address. Carly says, Melanie, do you think he'll waive his right to a speedy trial? And I say, yes, I do. You know why? Because there is so much evidence that they are going to have to go through. Think about Koberger and how much evidence they had to go through. And he waived his right to a speedy trial. And I mean, I think we're going to see that happen. His attorney, Michael Brown, is a pit bull. If you haven't seen him, he's very dynamic and he's very interesting to watch. HM, do we know any more about those timeout dolls left at the dumping sites on Gilgo? No, but I was looking into that the other day. And as I fell into that rabbit hole of these timeout dolls, I came across some information to indicate that perhaps the doll that came out in that glass case, that we really haven't been able to pinpoint exactly what kind of a doll that was, may have been some sort of a timeout doll or some sort of an Icelandic doll. I don't know. A bit odd. Olivia said, Mountain Cat, I'd like to see or look to see if any of his schoolmates ended up missing or a rock to the head written off as an accident. He feels like someone who did it a hot minute with all that confidence. Are you talking about Rex, or are you guys having a side conversation about something else? Okay, Miss Lizard said that was Asa's doll. Okay, maybe it was some sort of an Icelandic doll. Yep. I'm getting correct. I love when you guys correct me. Thank you. A lot of you know more about this than I do. I cover a lot of cases, so thank you for your info. Yeah, I think that may have been her doll. Yep. The doll may have been a collector's item. Okay. Yeah, there was some really, really weird, people were saying it was maybe a doll that he used for pleasure. I mean, just some really weird, creepy stuff. Flat Black Copper. If I needed to hire an attorney, I would hire Melanie in a heartbeat. Woo! If I needed. Okay. And Pat says, Maris hippy dippy, just like me. Yeah. All right. I'm going to remind you to say nice things in the chat about me and my guests. Thank you. That was sweet. Okay. Oblivious says, we were discussing his childhood and the dad dying feels like a childhood trauma that would lead to the boldness. Yeah. Yeah, I kind of agree with you there. I think he's got a lot of issues, and I think a lot of it may have started with childhood trauma, not excusing any of his behavior, because everyone who loses a parent early doesn't turn into a serial killer, and neither does every person who's a narcissist turn into a serial killer, or an addict turn into a serial killer. But, you know, when the totality of all of these things, you know, you don't ever know what you're going to get. The big question is, why do the kids have a different attorney than Asa? Well, Scott, Asa has an attorney for her divorce. The children have an attorney who is a civil litigator, who somebody pointed out to me used to be partners with, I think, Macedonio. So different interests, different attorneys, you know, especially if the wife may be considered a suspect at some point. It's better that they're represented separately. Also, you know, the kids may not have standing to bring an action for the property damage if they're not on the deed to the house, they're not on the insurance policy. There could be a lot of reasons, but typically lawyers are hired just as spokespeople, so he could just be their spokesperson, and I don't really know. But dolls were left at the grave sites by the beach. Yes, those are the timeout dolls that you were talking about, or someone was talking about before. Yeah, so somebody left these, and they're really creepy. I did a deep dive into this. If anybody doesn't know what timeout dolls are, just Google them, and you will find a whole bunch of them on eBay and other places. They're like these life-size dolls that look like children standing in the corner like they did something bad, like covering their eyes, and they're like shame dolls that are, they're really creepy and really weird. And somebody left miniature versions of those on the Gilgo 4 grave sites or memorial sites at Gilgo, and really, really, really strange. If anybody has any further insight into the timeout dolls, feel free to put it in the chat. Thank you. A lot of people asked that question. Thank you. And thank you, Patroness Glow. Looking forward to my memberships. Yeah, I'm going to get started with that in a little while, but I want to get some more subscribers first. So, hey, there's still 879 people in the chat. Please give me a thumbs up, subscribe, hit the bell. It's free. Olivia says that those dolls were to make bad kids behave. Yeah, that's kind of like, yes. And Wendy, exactly, Wendy. They have them at all old car shows. Why? What is the connection between old cars and these creepy timeout dolls? I don't know. I really don't know. Yeah, and the one that had stuffing coming out of her mouth. Yeah, that also could have been like picked up by a seagull or something. I don't know. Mountain Cat, I know there are at least 2 other cases where these timeout dolls have been rumored to have been left. Well, that's really interesting. Unless there's like grief tourists that go around and visit these places, and leave those at sites where people were murdered. And that's just like a thing that they do. I don't know. Kind of crazy. All right, you guys, well, we are an hour and 36 minutes into this. Thank you so much for spending your Saturday evening with me. Thank you to all my mods for keeping the chat classy. I know how much work you do. Sometimes people get a little bullying, or they start like fights and putting spam in there, and you guys are on top of it, and I trust you, and you make it all possible. So thank you so much for doing that. Thank you again to all my subscribers, for everyone who hung in there. And right, one more question. Do you have any feelings on Asa raising $50,000 off these families' tragedy? Well, I don't know, Carly, I know you have a lot of strong opinions, and that's why I want you to come on this show, because you could be a great devil's advocate for me. And I'm not saying that, I don't think people are donating money to profit off of others' tragedy. I think that there are some people that really genuinely feel badly for her as a victim and are trying to help her and her children. And I'm going to call them children. I know they're adults because I have 5 children, and some of them are adults, and I still call them my children, and I always will. Just get some semblance of dignity back, and some semblance of a home back. I mean, their mattresses were shredded, their couches were shredded. We saw them sitting on the porch because it was 110 degrees in the shade here in New York with about 110% humidity for like 2 weeks, and their air conditioning wasn't working. They don't have running water. So I don't see it that way. If somebody would start a GoFundMe for the victims' families and they needed money, I would 100% donate to that one as well. So I just don't really see it that way. And again, it goes into the same basket with why hasn't she said anything about the victims? And, I don't know what's going on in her head, but she probably has been told not to talk, and who knows? There definitely are grief tourists. Yeah, there are sicko people. Love that expression. Holly Golightly, who has my favorite name. Do you know that right across from me on the wall is a poster that is framed of Audrey Hepburn as Holly Golightly at Breakfast at Tiffany's, because that is my favorite movie. And in fact, if you notice, my walls are Tiffany blue because of that. And I actually took a Tiffany box to the paint store and had them mix the exact paint color of a Tiffany box so that I could live inside of a Tiffany box. So, fun fact about me. And everybody's still talking. Everybody is still talking. Okay, I'm going to have Meredith back. We're going to do a show on what it's like to love an addict, or be raised by an addict or an alcoholic, or to have a child who's an addict or an alcoholic, and the ripple effects that it causes for the family and the people who love them. So we're going to try and get that together for next week. Thank you again to all the mods in the chat and from my subscribers. And please leave comments. I love to go through the comments, and I do respond to them, and I do read them, and I do react to them. But please be kind to me and each other and to my guests, because if you do make any personal attacks or use any foul language or say anything really disgusting, the comments will be deleted. You'll be blocked. It'll be a whole thing. You don't want that to happen, right? So until next time, have a great night, everybody.